We got my boy back. We got badass cyborg ninja man back on the scene. I am very curious to know what the explanations will be on some of like the slight differences going on within the world between timeline 29 and timeline 30, because we still know exactly like how the timelines are gonna work. I'm wondering if it's gonna be like I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head of just time travel series. I had one and then I lost it, where it's just like every single timeline is going to be slightly different and not just like, oh yeah, it's a redo. It's like, no, these timelines are mildly different from each other in some small way or another. I guess like an easy way to kind of like, I think that the most bulk way to kind of just like, oh yeah, is the it's not timelines but alternate universes. The alternate universes in like Futurama. What was it, the first one they went to, like everything was kind of like determined differently. Like it was just like stuff decided by a coin flip was the opposite. So anything that like, oh, I'm gonna paint this green if it's heads and blue if it's tails, like, oh, it heads green, it's like, oh yeah, in the other world you got tails so it's blue, and stuff like that. Because there's been a slight like little notes on differences between things. There was even a bit at the end with Jin, so I'm interested to see how that goes. But as it were, now we have Amira. She's like talking to them, be like, okay, let's just, he can just keep Drac and Joe busy. We got to find his life support thing and figure out what's going on here. They're like, okay, sure, let's go. And then Moscow is like, okay, you're starting to bug me. You're starting to get on my nerves. Like clearly, there's gonna be some jokes now, messing with Moscow. I'm wondering if like Moscow is gonna be getting a little bit more attention right now, because maybe before this arc's over, he's gonna end up pressing the button on his stomach. I'm guessing that he'll switch into like some battle mode, and Hiroshima is gonna kind of do some like Prince and the Frog thing, where his battle mode is like some stud dude and some badass looking older guy. He's gonna be like that Chad fucking guy, but then and then when it runs out, he's just like this, and that's why Sister keeps around. She's like, listen, I like the other version. This one does chores for him, and the other one he's a badass. But outside of that, like, keep this guy in the corner. But from that point, we get they're like, okay, we gotta go find the stuff with Drac and Joe, and we're gonna go find his machine. And there was a comment about there was a thing of like, it's not just that it rejuvenates them. I'm guessing what it does is it absorbs life, because we have that comment from Sylph about saying how she's gonna get absorbed by Drac and Joe. I'm wondering if like if you get so far in debt with him or just piss him off so much, he'll just like absorb life from you and put that in his body. And maybe that's why he wants Cat Leaper, is not so he can go back in time to where he can draw out the power of Cat Leaper to put in his body. So instead of using life force or just time or whatever the way he's doing it in to be like, oh yeah, it'll temporarily just kind of juice me up. Instead it's like, no, it's gonna be what it'll do is, instead of just kind of like feed it, it's gonna reverse time on it, so it was like how it was a long time ago, so I don't have to worry about this for another 200 plus years or whatever, however old he is. Because we do know that he has the ability to extract ether gear powers and like put it into weapons, so you can probably do that and put his machine. That might be what he's been doing it for. Then we got like Shiki and Drac and Joe going against each other. When Drac and Joe, so the interesting thing in this world, Drac and Joe has no reason to go into overdrive. He has no reason to drop overdrive on Shiki just because, like, he used that version that we saw when Shiki fought Jin, because they both had that pseudo version where their ether lines were going off of their body. So that was like a reason for him to be like, oh, you guys think this is overdrive? Fine. Like, if he ends up, like, Shiki ends up getting to that state again, like he's got the lines on, then I could see Drac and Joe being like, oh, you think that's overdrive? What do you think you're doing here? Let me show you what it actually is. But they're just kind of fighting right now, and you're seeing like a display of their power. Shiki just rushes in. Drac and Joe turns his arm into metal, just gives a heavy hit on him, and Shiki's just going into some moves, grabs some rubble, and then like uses anti-gravity to shoot these rocks at him, just as some shrapnel debris. And then Shiki like just charges up, gets ready for his gravity comet, shoots in. Drac and Joe just blocks it with little effort. I don't think that Because Shiki can use Gravity Comet. Like, the way that Gravity Comet kind of reminds me of, it's kind of like Natsu with his Fire Dragon King moves. Like, he can use them not in his Fire Dragon King mode. Like, he can base use Fire Dragon King Demolition Fist, but when he uses it in the actual Fire Dragon King mode, it's like where you're actually getting like to the full extent before he gets like Dragon Force, or like if he ever pushes himself into like Savage Dragon Force. But you know what I mean? Where you can use it in base, but it's not gonna carry nearly as much stuff. Like, because he's not like, if he used his the ether lines off the body version of Gravity Comet and did nothing, then I'd be kind of like a lot more in trouble, or I'd be like more worried. But he's in some trouble. But he hasn't gotten to that part with his ether gear, so he's like, okay, he can still get stronger. Like, he's still got bigger moves. He can still drop some stuff on here. This is just like his strongest thing in his base form, but it's also like a straight head-on attack. Maybe he can work out like a strategy to him. But Draken Joe, we know Draken Joe's ether gear, like, it's alchemy. He can mess with matter. He can change things into different things. Like, he takes the rocks, he turns them into explosive charges. I wish that we got to know how he did it. Like, not just in the idea of like, oh yeah, he alters the matter to make it into explosives. I wish it was like Hiromashima. It's like, oh, I'll change this one into one element, this one into another one. They combined, and the chemical reaction causes an explosion. Because really, that's what his is. It's alchemy. He's able to mess with things and their composition, and mess with the different elements and stuff. Not like the magical elements, but more of like the scientific elements. I mean, he can do just a lot of stuff in general. Like, he doesn't have to just abide by the science method. Like, he can his seems to be more of like, not like Edward Elric alchemy where he has to abide by the rules. His is just like he's altering stuff to become other things. Like, his is like if he already had the Philosopher's Stone. He's just like being like, okay, yeah, floor explosive. Oh yeah, wall. I'm just gonna like convert areas into do massive electric charges. There was a cool part. I mentioned this in it's not going to be out by the time. I'm going to put this video out today, but the Black Clover video, I mentioned in my Black Clover video that won't be out until I hit 3K subs. But I never thought about it from the perspective of Shiki when he jumps out of the way of the attack and he lands on the ceiling, that Draken Joe is like, oh, you can fly, and Shiki's like, no, I fell onto the ceiling. And I never thought about it, because when I read this chapter and I thought about it for a good moment, I'm like, when you really kind of like put effort into like the idea behind his power and how you would experience from Shiki, is it's not like Shiki is just like floating and then he lands on the ceiling and he's holding himself there. He's using gravity manipulation. So from his perspective, it's not like he just like, oh, I'm gonna mess with gravity to where I can kind of cling to the wall. For him, it's like he took gravity and shifted it upside down. So he's still feeling gravity like the same way you would be if you just were standing there, but it'd be like if it just, 180'd and then you fell to the ceiling and then you just kind of stood up. You would be like, to somebody else, you'd be like, dude, how are you doing that? But from your perspective, you're normal and they're not. And they're the ones standing like, oh yeah, how are you on the ceiling? You'd be really confused. But it's really just from what perspective you have, with the gravity manipulation. I thought that was just really cool to think about because, we're almost 100 chapters into Eden Zero, and I never really kind of thought about that of like what it probably feels like when Shiki is using his anti-gravity. Then, he's using more of his electrical powers. He just lays into Shiki and just is really kind of just hitting him with big attacks over and over. Right, so the question, though, that I have that I'm a little worried about is I thought it was going to be Shiki and Jin against Draken Joe, which it still can be, but otherwise, like, how is Shiki going to fight him? Unless something happens, like Justice shows up or something just crazy out of the blue, but other than that, he's getting beat up, and we know that Shiki is not strong enough to fight Draken Joe 1v1 right now, like, at all. He might have some main character power-up or something coming, but nothing that we can kind of, like, gauge with yet. Like, if he has something, like, maybe we find out what makes him special, like, why did Ziggy take him in, maybe some super alien race, or, something along that gets unlocked for some reason, but, outside of that, until we get some more hints, it's more of the idea of like, well, then how is he going to survive? How is he going to win? I still think Jin needs to show up and help, because I want this to be a tag matching. That'd be really cool. Two super mobility guys against one dude whose power is just large, flexible, like strategic style. And then we have Homura, who's just Homura doing her thing. she's with Lobelia, and she's like thinking about like, "Ugh, man, it's a good thing I found this outfit, or I would have to wear some of these skimpy ones. But you know, maybe I'll give it a try sometime. You know, I'd like to give it a shot. I like Homura. I think she's just a very enjoyable character, and I like all aspects. I really am looking forward to when Eden Zero gets animated. It should be getting an anime announcement hopefully soon. Like, we're almost at 100 chapters when you think about it. Like, because even if it got an announcement like tomorrow, it would be 6+ months, maybe to a year, before it ended up getting an anime. So they would have plenty of time to get further ahead. And if you're more than 100 chapters ahead of the anime, you're perfectly fine. But you just have them kind of like talking. She's talking to Lobelia, and you get some normal stuff of Homura talking about how she wields her sword in defense of her friends. She's the sword of Eden's, and it's just nice in general to see kind of like that laid out, where you're just getting some cool character spots for her. And then again, more stuff from Sylph. Talk about she doesn't want to get absorbed by Drac and Joe. More mystery on like his power and whatnot, and what exactly his how exactly his machine works. And then back down inside of like his area where he keeps his zone all set up. You think you'd have more security than just Jin, because Jin is like a on higher, because Jin isn't part of his element 4. So like if it wasn't for Jin coming to like be near his sister, you probably wouldn't have anybody to guard like his important like area. And those are the things like I wish that like Hades should have thought better about. I mean, he already had like all his best guys taken out, so I don't really blame him. But I mean, I feel like, especially like if you have like a big fortress like the Beliogor is, you probably should have somebody like always down here just in case, or at least some like security systems in place. It's unfortunate you got these guys who are just you got a really important aspect about what keeps you kind of going, but you don't have anybody properly to guard it. I mean, at least at this point they have Jin. But Jin does look different. He looks a lot leaner than he did, when we saw him in World 29. He looks a lot more kind of like set. He's got a different headband. I'm guessing he still has the enhancements, and he's still going to be able to kind of, I can operate at this much extra 100%. What was it, like 280? I don't remember the exact number that he said. But he's like ready to fight these guys. I'm interested in seeing how this goes down. I think him versus Arsenal is going to be really cool. And out of the group, I'm just looking at the crew. I don't think like he's gonna be able to beat him 1v1. Like, I don't think Arsenal's gonna be. That's one of the reasons I think Moscow is gonna have to like do something with his belly button and activate some form of battle mode and kind of like engage in this fight, because Rebecca's not strong enough. Amira seems to she's more stealth. Pina's not really gonna do anything. I mean, Pina's got her EMP, but I don't think that it's gonna be like a cheap win like that. Sibber's not really doing it. I think it could be Moscow because he's got that button. We know it does something. We don't know what it does. We'll see. Either way, though, solid chapter. I like the start of it and the realization of, like, just in my mind of, like, how it must feel for Shiki to use his powers. This messes up, and what I'm thinking about, like, man, I probably should have figured that out a long time ago. But just all around, like, solid, fun layout. I'm looking forward to this next set of chapters. We're getting close to 100, which is going to be really exciting. I'm hoping that Hiroshima does the defeat of Drac and Joe at 100, just because it'd be really cool to have that as like that mark of oh yeah, Salvatore chapter 100 beat around, or something like it. If he does it something close to that, I'm just gonna end up thinking of that it's close to like when Natsu beat Jalal, because it was around that same kind of time. Like I think it was like Chapter 98 is when he got Dragon Force. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I'm trying to also, like, before I close this out, of, like, where Haru was at that same, like, about to hit Chapter 100. And there was that was, I think, Volume 11? I'm just perusing right now through some Wraith Master stuff, just trying to remember where he was at the time. Come on, where is it? Oh my god, I'm 2 volumes off. Volume 13? That was after the time skip. Anyway, other than that, though, solid stuff. Good chapter. I'm really looking forward to Jin. I know, like, the fight with Drac and Joe and Shiki is going to be the big stuff. But obviously, I really like Jin, so I really want to see more of what he's capable of. And other than that, though, comment below, thumbs up from the like button, subscribe. I guess for Haru, it was still around the time with the 2 Gales fighting. Anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Rather than that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening.